Melaveh Moshe said Chaim. Chaim. Kein Ti Zer Lanu. Chaim. Baruch atah Adonai Melech Haolam shehakol li b'dvarei. Chaim l'bracha. You have to sing another name. Year of all the brachas, Shnas bracha and Hatzlacha and all the blessings. You should come join us tonight for the holy Melaveh Malkah and Dovid of Lelov. So you will expand your brachas on levels that are not shayach even to imagine. Chaim the brachas, all the brachas. L'chaim the brachas. So the holy Rebbe Malkah and Rebbe Zusha, who used to travel around towns and villages, Ukraine, Galicia, Volin as it was called, that whole area. And one time, after schlepping around for quite a while, they needed a little break and needed a place to put their weary bodies down. They're looking for a house that has a mezuzah. They were passing by the little town of Biala. Some of you are familiar with the Biala Rebbe. So they were passing by the town of Biala. And as they're passing by, as they're passing by this town, they found a house with a mezuzah. They knocked on the door. And a little boy opened the door. And they asked the little boy where if his parents are here. The little boy said his mother and his father went to town. And he was like in the outskirts, living in the outskirts. The mother and town traveled to the market, they went to town, they went to go shopping, whatever it was. And he asked them no, so they said, yeah, they'll be coming back soon. Fine. But they were the holy eyes of Rebbe Malkah and of Zusha were very taken by this boy. They looked at him, this little boy, and they saw that he's got what others don't have. And they looked at his face. And then they decided to wait. They sat down outside, on the outside of the house, and they were waiting. Maybe they sat on a little log, and they were sitting and waiting. A little while later, the parents come back. So they asked if they can come in. The parents invited them in. Imagine this, the holy Rebbe Malkah and Rebbe Zusha, the two brothers, come inside. They're talking to the parents, but they can't take their eyes off this little boy. There's something about this little boy that's really taking them. They're looking and looking. They realize that he's got a very holy soul. You see, these are the soul masters. So they look at this boy and they're wondering, how did he end up by them? Like, why? Well, we all know the famous story of how the Melech and Reb Zusha's parents managed to get the holy souls of the Melech and Reb Zusha. The famous story that Blazer Lippmann, the old Friediger Rebbe tells the story. So they knew that there's something going on over here. They want to know something. So they right away want to know what's the inside story, what's the backstory. So they started to look, besides looking at the boy, they stayed there for a while, they were examining the father. They were trying to find something unique and special by the father. And they couldn't detect anything by the father that would show that he was an unusual fellow. He seemed to be a very regular. After a while, the father had to leave. He left, and they were there. So they decided to speak to they decided to debrief the mom a little. So they spoke to the mother, and they said, "Tell us something about your husband." "Oh, my husband is a regular guy. He's a very simple yid. His name is Shloimeh. Very simple yid." I said, "No. Tell us. Tell me that it must be something very unique and special. Something very great about him." He said, "No. He's nothing special in learning. He's not very big in his avodah and anything." They said nothing. They pressed her. They pressed her a little bit for more. She said, "The only thing I can think of," he said, "is one unusual thing by him. Very unusual. He's a simple yid. That every day, every Shabbos, Shalosh Shudas, there's a Zmiris that they sing by Shalosh Shudas. And the Zmiris by Shalosh Shudas, it says, it's Avet Zechah, I remember when I was a kid, I used to sing it always by the Tish that I used to go to, the Rebbe that I used to go to, Shalosh Shudas. And my husband, when he sings that Zemer, he literally breaks down crying, and he cries, like from the depth of his neshama, he's crying. These are that he should merit to have children. So much so that at times he falls and he faints. That's how deeply he sobs that he should have children. So when they heard this, they said, jetzt verstehen wir schon now. This was this boy, his name was Dovid, who later is going to become a student of Melaveh Malkah. He was a holy neshama, just because the merit that he came down to these parents, because the father literally every Shabbos bawled his soul out in crying from a very deep place, a very sincere place. The most important thing to him was that he should have special children. Hashem blessed him. Now there's an actual story like that stated in Tana Devei Eliyahu. In the Sefer from Eliyahu Hanavi, there is a story where he writes that there was a certain kohen who used to, fall to the ground every day and cry and beg and daven to the Eibishter that he should have special children and none of his children should, chas v'shalom, go astray and so on and so forth. And he davened so deeply every single day. He would cry, and his child ended up being Ezra HaSefer. That's what Eliyahu Hanavi says. So if we talk about appearances, prayers, how powerful it is. The parent davened, and that's what brought him Ezra HaSefer, and all the generations of Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah, they're all descendants of Ezra HaSefer, the Kohen HaGadol. So this is the son. So you have a similar story, so that the tefillas of parents go very deep. Rabbi Elazar, Dovid of Lelov. So after Dovid of Lelov passed away many years later, or quite a while later, Reb Chaim of Tzanz wrote a certain letter to his grandchildren, and in the letter he refers to him to their grandfather, and he refers to him with a certain thing like his grandfather was alive. He wrote Nun Yud. When you write for a living person, sometimes you can write. So for someone who passed away, you write Olav Shalom, or if it's a tzaddik, you write Zatzal. But someone who's alive, you can write it in. So he wrote Neira Yair, Nun Yud, means Neira Yair, may his lamp shine. So they didn't understand, because their grandfather of Dovid Lelov passed away a while ago. So when they asked Reb Chaim of Tzanz, he said, Dovid Melech Yisrael Chai V'Kayim. Dovid Melech Yisrael lives on. That there's no passing by tzadikim like this. Especially, and Moshe, the son of Reb Dovid of Lelov, said that my father, I have a Kabbalah that my father is a nitzitz of Dovid HaMelech's neshama. Other big tzaddikim said about him that was big. He had a student, Reb Shaya of Pshavars, said about his Rebbe. He said that when Mashiach will come, Mashiach will select the Dovid of Lelov, and he'll be part of Mashiach's Beis Din. Mashiach is going to have a Beis Din that's going to be able to look with the eyes of the ultimate Avos Yisrael. Everybody needs to get an exemption once Mashiach comes. Everybody you have to get every Jew into the thing. No one could be black, as we know. So you're going to have tzaddikim who can find schus on everybody. Mashiach Tzidkenu himself is going to be the ultimate Melamed schus, but he's going to surround himself with a Beis Din of tzaddikim of the highest caliber. And he said that Dovid of Lelov is going to be a dayan in Mashiach's court. A dayan in Mashiach's court. He said, this is one of his students, Reb Shai of Pshavars, was a big rebbe. The Chayz of Lublin, who was his rebbe, as we're soon going to see, he said that my student Reb Dovid is the Yesoid. He's the foundation of all the tzaddikim. The foundation of all the tzaddikim. And he said he's someone that until Mashiach comes, we're not going to know his greatness. In other words, his greatness is not actually, can't be toifet. He can't be massive the greatness of, so much so that after he passed away, Reb Dovid Lelov, his wife of Reb Dovid of Lelov, sent his cup, his becher, to the Chayza from Lublin. The Chayza of Lublin lived a year longer past Reb Dovid of Lelov, who was really a student. He was a rebbe on his own, but he was a student of the Chayza. And just to give you a little bit of a perspective on time, Reb Dovid of Lelov was born a year after the Alter Rebbe was born. His life literally parallels the Alter Rebbe's life. He was born in Tov Kuv Vav. The Alter Rebbe was born in Tov Kuv He. He was born 1 year after the Alter Rebbe, and he passed away. According to there's two opinions whether it was in Tov Kuv Ayin Gimel or Tov Kuv Ayin Daled, which would translate into 1812, or 1813, or 1814. His yahrzeit was Zayin Shvat. That's why we're celebrating now. It was 2 weeks ago, on the 7th day of Shvat. So he passed away like a year after the Alter Rebbe, or the same year. So he lived the same amount of years, same time. As far as I know, they never met. The Alter Rebbe was in Russia. This is in Galicia. This is in Poland. He never went to the Magid. He didn't yet turn to Chassidus at that age. He didn't meet the Magid, but he became the first. His karvus, the Chassidus, was to the Melaveh of Lezensk. Melaveh was like the grand Rebbe after the Magid in Poland was Melaveh. In Russia was Mendel of Vitebsk, Mendel Horodokar, until he went up to Eretz Yisrael. But in Poland, Melaveh of Lezensk, and all of Poland became Chassidim. This was like all under the influence of Rebbe Melech of Lezensk. And Reb Dovid was a student of his. When Reb Dovid was a very, very young man, he worked on himself very much. He was a high neshamas. The high neshamas, they notice immediately the blockages that the body is able to interfere between their godly experiences. And they know they need purification. They need to clean the body a little bit, that the body shouldn't dray a cup. So they need to smooth the body out. And Chassidus came along that we shouldn't beat up the body. That's one of the things Chassidus taught us. That we're supposed to work with the body, as for sure, not beat the body. But that, the reason we were able to work with the body is because we had thousands of years of people beat the body. Once they beat the body, now the body's already beaten enough that it could cooperate. It didn't work like that. It wasn't like the early generations totally missed the point. It's just that the body in those days needed first to be a little bit need to be broken in. Once they finished their avoid, and now came the next avoid. So the Baal Shem Tov already taught his Talmidim to stop eating the body. But many of the students of the Baal Shem Tov were oisik because they were very spiritual people. So they did very, very much work, spiritual exercises. Part of that was tiny ois, gufim, intense mortifications and fasting and so on and so forth. So Reb Dovid in particular was oisik very much in self-purifications, in which he spent 6 years following what's called Shuvas Hakanah. Shuvas Hakanah, a certain recipe of fasts that you do from the Sefer of Reb Nechunya ben Hakanah, one of the great mystics and Kabbalists in the days of the Tanoim. Reb Nechunya ben Hakanah, who was mentioned in Shas very, very sparsely, but he was a huge Kabbalist. In those days, you have a lot of Tanoim who were mainly known for their nigla, for the revealed part, for the rabbinic elements, Talmudic elements. And then there were those few, Reb Chaim ben Dais, so there were a few that that they were purely in the realm of mysticism. So Reb Nechunya ben Hakanah is one of these. He wrote a Sefer Hakanah. And over there, he gives a recipe for very, very, very intense breakdown of the body. And there's all kinds of fasts, and then they take upon themselves other kinds of mortifications, like rolling in the snow without any clothing on, so that you freeze and you cause like intense Gilgul Shell, like intense stuff. He did this work for 6 years, 6 years, and then afterwards he felt still so uncomfortable. He felt he needs another circumcision, needs another bris milah. Pashat begash means he was mativ dam bris a second time, like he feels like he has to, the body was interfering too much with him. After he finished all of this, he decided he's going for another 6 years. This is dealing with intense avodah, intense avodah. And when they asked him why he's doing it, he said because he feels that he doesn't love another Jew the way he should. In other words, his ego, his selfishness is so deep that he has to root out the selfishness, so that in other words, it was all because that he feels that his Avos Yisrael is not at where it's supposed to be, to really feel another Yid as much as he feels himself. So just for the sake of Afta L'Recha Kamoicha, he needed to diminish the body. There's this interesting story that there was a Yid. This is from the early days. The story must have happened because afterwards he stopped doing segufim. So the story that I'm going to tell you now must have been from the early days. What happened was, I'll assume, I'll make my assumption. There was a Yid one time who notified the Chevra Kadisha that this Yid is about to, the burial society, that this Yid is about to pass away. So the burial society came. They would do, especially, you have a million of people say Shema Yisrael, the whole thing. It was on Erev Shabbos. It was Friday afternoon. So this Jew is there, and he suddenly turns to the wall, turns away, and he's looking at the wall for a while. Then he turns back over, and he tells everybody, "Getz, you can all leave. Getz chaim." Basically, I'm okay. I'm not dying now. So they left. He suddenly, Motzei Shabbos, he notifies they should come back. So the people come back. He comes back, and they say with him vidui, and he's ready to. And they said to him, what's going on? Because they say, and he said, now I'm ready, and I'm going to pass. So they asked him, like you said, you were here yesterday. He was manish. They knew that he's geisis. He was at the moment already. He looked like he was going. So he said, I have one more story to tell before I go. Let me tell you what happened. When I was a young man, a bacher or something, I was a meshaditz. I was an attendant at the house of the father-in-law of Reb Dovid of Lelov. So I was an attendant at that house. One morning, my boss, wakes me up very early, and he tells me I should take a ram, an animal or a sheep, and take it to the shechet, early morning. Okay. As I go out, it was freezing. The wind was biting. It was like impossible. It was like impossible. It was so. And I'm walking, and I see someone laying on the floor in the snow, and he looks like he's lifeless. And I come over, and I take a look, and I see it's none other than Dovid, the son-in-law of my boss. And I right away I jumped and I did whatever I can. I picked him up. So what happened was he went out early morning and he was cracking the ice to go tovel in the mikveh, and was part of his avodah, freezing the mikveh. So it looks like when he came out of the mikveh, he was so overtaken by the frost and the whole situation. Probably had fasted and all that. He collapsed in a faint and he almost was done. So he picked him up and he brought him to the house and he covered him and he gave him tea and he kind of brought him back to life. So the Dovid told me, that's what he said. He told this Yid is relating. He said to me, I owe you a reward for taking care of me. So he said to me, I'll give you a choice. He said, you can either have ashiras, I give you a bracha for great wealth, or I can give you olam haba. I can give you the world to come. So you choose which one you want. So the Yid said he wants olam haba. That's what I said. It's smart Yid. He said he wants olam haba. So he could have said ashiras, and then he could have gotten olam haba by all the good things he could have done with the money. But okay. In any case, but this is what he said. So the Dovid said to him, okay, so listen here. You can't die until I come see you. Okay, when I come, you can go. But you're going to see me not in a dream. You're going to see me alive. You're going to see me buckets. When you're awake, you're going to see me. So I knew that I'm not going to pass on until so when you came to me on Friday, when I felt that I'm literally going, I turned to the wall because I was waiting to see him, and he didn't come. But then Motzei Shabbos, he came. I just saw him. He came to me, and that's when I told everybody. What happened? He told me that in Gan Eden, the Dovid had already passed away then. He said in Gan Eden, they had told him that he needs to go down and pick up the, he needs to go, the guy's passing away. You made a promise you're going to go see him, so you have to go down. He said it's Erev Shabbos. And on Erev Shabbos, in such a holy time, I get the vach, on Erev Shabbos, on such a holy time, in such an incredible godly time, I'm not able to, the Dovid said, I don't want to go down to such a grubbe welt, such a coarse world. So Erev Shabbos, I'm not going. It's to the physical world is too coarse, I'm not going now. The Shabbos, he came down and fulfilled his pledge to this Yid. And the Yid said, now I know I'm going. So they said Taka what they said, and he passed away. This was in the early days when he was still doing his segufim. In any case, he, after all of his segufim and inyanim, he still felt very like he's not there. To tell another story, by the way, regarding this particular, I would imagine it's also regarding this particular time. At one time, he was walking and he was fasting from Shabbos to Shabbos. That was one of the deep runs of mortifications and purifications was to fast, and to fast a whole week. I don't know if it means that they wouldn't I don't know if it means, I don't know how they managed to survive, but this was what it was. That's Tzadikim. Anyways, and it was like towards the end of the week, and he was like thirsty, Shein Kamoyo, and it just happened to be walking by a place where he just happened to walk by a place where he sees a fresh mayon, a spring of water. And suddenly the thirst overcame him, and he couldn't hold out the fast. So he bent down, and he was going to break the fast, and he was going to take the water. At that last moment, he managed to get control over himself and say b'shuma, and he's fasting. So he held back, and he didn't drink the water. And he continued walking. And a little while later, he suddenly felt enormous joy. He felt such joy that he had overcome his temptation at that moment. He almost fell. He felt terrific. And as he's experiencing these great simcha, tzadikim, they have such an amazing sense to be able to sense where things are coming from. He, at that moment, decided that this joy that he's feeling right now is not coming from the side of holiness. It's coming from the klippa and the sitrach. It's coming from the knef shebahamis, who's feeling pride and arrogance. He's feeling an ego. He's feeling like what a tzaddik I am, and this and that. So he turned around immediately, went right back to the water, took the thing, made the shahakal, and drank the water, and that was that. So this is, I guess, the way it seems to me from the story, is that probably this story even happened before he came to the Melaveh Malkah, before he was already, we're talking about a high neshama on a very high level. But then he decided that he needs a Rebbe, and he heard that the Melaveh Malkah is lifting neshamas and people up to levels that are beyond. So he traveled to the Melaveh Malkah of Luzensk. As the story goes, again, it's hard to verify these stories, but there's a beautiful story told about his first encounter with the Melaveh Malkah of Luzensk. He comes into the Melaveh Malkah to take shalom, and as he's standing in front now, the story fits because once you know Reb Dovid's intense self-discipline and work that he worked on himself and worked. The Chedushay Harim, generally people never saw him learning. He was a goyen adir. He was a nifladig goyen. He was a genius of a genius. The Chedushay Harim, the Gerer Rebbe, said that Reb Dovid of Lelov, when he was 25 years old, finished 14 times Shas. Yet no one saw him learning. Everything was 14. When he was 20, no, when he was 24. When he was 25, he's 25. So he was a goyen. But he everything was.
When you're getting $7 a day,
whatever, he was an avodah. His learning was better. Everything was fine. Yeah, whatever. I don't know. I didn't count his daf. I don't know how he did it, but this is what he did. He did it in any case. So as he went through, why was I saying this? Because hold on, I'm telling you something.
the first time you get to the building.
Yeah. So when he's coming to the Melech, no. There was something that triggered that I told you about 25. This. Anyways, so as he comes to the Melech. And he's coming to take shalom. And when he stands right in front of the Melech looks, and the Melech says, "How dare the Melech says this person come to me?" The Melech says, "This person comes to me, and has a stench." The Melech says, "Has a stench." So the Dovid got mortified. And he ran back to his achsania. He ran back to his house, where he was staying. And he was pacing back and forth, bewildered. He's coming to a tzaddik who can see everything. And he is busy, purifying himself. The Melech dismisses him like this, garnished with a stench. So he went back. And he was mamash very heartbroken. So the balachsania, the Balachsania means host, where he was staying by, told him, "Man, don't worry, go try again. Go a second time." So he came back to the shul, and he was there. And after Shachris or whatever the davening was, happy birthday. After the davening or whatever it was, he comes back a second time, and he goes to Rebbe Melech this time, and Rebbe Melech says, "Who's bringing such a stench over here? Into Verbrenk, oy vey." This was finished. He went back and decided, was so heartbroken. He decided that he can't go even to shul. He can't show his face to the Melech. He was so broken. So the whole Shabbos he didn't come. And he decided after Shabbos he's going back because he was rejected. Fartik. He can't be there. He's rejected. But then he decided, you know what? He sees Rav Melech is such a tzaddik. Let me at least go shalosh shudas. I'll stand behind the window and I'll look into the Torah that Melech is. So the Melech, as he's sitting, the Melech starts saying Shalashudis Torah. He's standing behind, listening in front of the window. And the Melech says like this: there are young people that come to me, who are oisik in sikufim and in purifications and in tanesim, and they do all kinds of work, and they work on themselves and they're even matif dam bris. So they even do a bris milah, the dam bris on themselves, and they think that they've already reached the highest levels of purification, and they're just coming to me hoping that I'm going to fix the last few little tikkunim that they need, and then I'm going to shower them with the Ruach HaKodesh. These people need to know that they haven't even started serving the Eibishter, and everything that they do is just an avodah. They're too busy with themselves, and they have to do tshuva on their entire service, on their entire avodah Hashem. He hears literally Rabbi Melech talking to him. He broke down crying and weeping. He couldn't come to himself. And after Shalshudis was over and the Melech made Havdalah, he decided, let it be what it is. He's going into the Melech. So he comes and he pushed himself. He comes into the Melech, and the Melech stood up and ran over to him and hugged him. He said, Rabbi Dovid, come on in. And then the Melech's son, Rabbi Elazar, was shocked. He said, this is the person you said had a stench. He said, no, this is unser Reb Dovid. This is unser Reb Dovid. So this was the entrance into Chassidus. Chassidus required total bittul, total nullification, total. After you finished all your work, you had to still be taught that you didn't even start yet. And if there was any trace of pride or even the slightest bit of something, that's what a Rebbe did. The Rebbe was able to just burn it out. So there should be absolute purity, just pure Shebe pure. And then they became these tzadikim that were just, they were always the tzadikim, just to burrow through and open up their neshamas on these deepest and deepest of levels. So l'chaim. Mazel tov, Rabbi Pe'er. We have to sing Siman Tov again. Mazel tov. Only nachas. Mazel tov. Rabbi Pe'er's daughter is engaged. Mazel tov. Chaim. L'chaim. No? Sing a niggun. L'chaim. Shloima brings, Holy Reb Shloima of Radomsk brings. First of all, I want to say that tonight's Melaveh Malkah is sponsored by the Tzadikim family, by Velvel, and Velvel's mother's yard site is tonight. Oh, Chafei, this week. What's her name? Dina Rezel Bas. It's like God, I made this be an Aliyah's neshama for her. Right. And also Mrs. Roth has mother's yard site tonight. She also from today's. Shav Bas Rabbi Yitzchak Isaac. She's not here yet, Mrs. Roth. Maybe she'll be here soon. Should be Aliyah's neshama for her as well. In any case, in the Sefer Tzvedah Shloima from the Holy Reb Shloima of Radomsk, he writes that Dovid Lelov said, "How can they say about me that I am the Tzaddik Hador when I love my children more than I love every Jew? Because when I still feel a little bit of a deeper love to my child more than I love another Yid, then that's a sign that I can't be the Tzaddik Hador. Because the Tzaddik Hador loves every single Yid with this absolute love, like one loves their single child. I even tell the story that one time, his son was very ill, and everybody around was davening for the refuah shalema for his son, and everybody they called doctors, they were doing whatever they can. Finally, his son came out of danger. I guess the tefillahs worked, the work that they did, whatever they did, everything worked. And they came running to Reb Dovid to tell him that his son is out of danger. And Reb Dovid broke out crying. And he was crying and crying. And they asked him, what's it? They thought he would be so happy. And he said, yeah, he says, but for another year, they don't do everything that he did for my son. For another year, they're not turning over worlds. They're not saying Tehillim like this. They're not gathering minyanim in the shuls. They're not running around. And that hurt him at that moment that he feels. So I have over here that someone's going to tell us a story about our Rebbetzin, that we talk about their children. I can tell it, but you told it to me. I want to hear it directly. When I read this story, I remember the story that I heard this week, and that Rabbi Holtzman, right, had personally experienced with the Rebbetzin, our Rebbetzin. And I figured that being that the Rebbetzins yard site is this week, Rebbetzin Chaim Mushke's yard site is this week, so I'm going to, in connection to the story that I just told you about love, like your one and only child, Rabbi Holtzman is just going to tell this story. Yeah, you ready? Oh, tell just this story. Very special. Come sit down. Tell the Maisa. And Holtzman is here from Eretz Yisrael, and he does amazing. But he can still tell the story. He saves hundreds and hundreds of lives in Eretz Yisrael. Does amazing good work. He's getting the defibrillators into every shul in Israel. Mamish saving lives and many other good things. But he had an amazing story with the Rebbetzin. You can tell the story. Sit down? Whatever you like. Sitting or standing, whatever you like. Sit down and story. Hi.
Chaim L'chaim. First of all, Kavod Achsani, I wish Rabbi Wolf to have a lot of Hatzlach in this place. Very soon we should get to a bigger building. And this when the Rebbe is going to come, we're going to see Chaim L'chaim. My English is not so perfect, so you have to excuse me. I'm trying my best.
The story comes through very beautiful.
Okay, which story?
One day when you told me when you were a little boy about
The children in
about the children, yeah.
So it was Tov Shel Lamed Aleph, 1971. I was the age of 7 years old. And because my father used to be a Meshamash B'Kodesh in the Rebbe's house, he used to be serving in the Rebbe's house for years, in the early years in the 50s, in the youths. So we had the occasion to come and visit, to see the Rebbetzin several times. For Tov Shel Lamed Aleph, we came for Tishrei. So usually what we used to come for Tishrei, we used to come...
That time you were living in Belgium.
Yeah, so we came from Belgium for Tishrei. So we came before Rosh Hashanah to say hello to the Rebbetzin, and then again, Aseret Yemei Teshuvah or Erev Yom Kippur to ask Lekach to get from the Rebbetzin Lekach. And then another time, Sukkot time, to say Good Yom Tov, and again, after Simchas Torah, before leaving, to say goodbye. So we came at least 4 times. Maybe we came once more, I don't remember, I was a small kid. So the last time, after Yom Tovim, I was wondering, every time we come, there's a house of 3 floors, but for sure there's some children, and I don't see the children. So I asked the Rebbetzin, I would like to see your children. And I'm sure you have a lot of children, you have a big house. So the Rebbetzin became serious, and my mother was like pinching me under the table. Such a stupid question. I didn't understand what's so stupid. It's a normal question. So anyway, the Rebbetzin told me, even given in 770, you were in 770, even a small child used to say ear. Like in English it's not rochilik, but in other languages, like them. I say, yes. You saw people over there. I say, yeah. She tells me, those people in 770, that's my children. I look on the Rebbe, I look at my mother, and I'm getting confused. I mean, is somebody making a joke out of me? I told the Rebbe, there's a lot of people over there, so all those people, they're all your children and all. And my mother interrupts, and she tells me, as the Rebbe sagt, the Rebbe is telling like this, it's exactly like this. And the Rebbe shakes with their hands. Yeah. So my lesson, till today, even we don't see the Rebbe and the Rebbe, but if somebody is walking in 770, he becomes to be a child of the Rebbe and the Rebbe. So take a plane ticket and go to 770. L'chaim. The Rebbe is not enough for you? No. We never came when the Rebbe was present. We used to. L'chaim.
Thank you so much. So we talked.
Told one for the Rebbe to could give brochus also.
Yeah. So the Avos Yisrael we say about that to feel that your child, that every yid is your child. So Reb Dovid Lelov was spectacular in his Avos Yisrael. His love to another yid was like on levels that were like. The Chaim of Tan said about him that Lelov is the word loy lev. To him, the heart. To him is a heart. He was so going back to the days of Reb Dovid Lelov with Rebbe Melach, the Shinev Rav, Rabbi Cheskel of Shinev, related a story like this. After Rebbe Melach, after Reb Dovid came to Rebbe Melach, and Rebbe Melach already stopped him from his mortifications and segufim and all these types of things. So he continued fasting, But he didn't continue fasting because he was fasting. He continued fasting because he would forget to eat. It was a different type of fast. That's the fasting that Chassidus didn't necessarily always stop. If you're so involved in Avodah that you're davening and you're learning and you're so into it, you're in a state of dveikus, that simply you forget about the Gashmias. So it so happened that Reb Dovid once woke up. Beautiful story. Reb Dovid of Lelov once woke up after midnight, like he would wake up. He slept an hour or 2-3 hours. He woke up to do for Tikkun Chatzos, right, by midnight. And then he would continue his Avodah. And because he hadn't eaten for days, he suddenly felt so weak. And he felt he was going to faint. So he immediately, his Rebbe had told him to take care of the body. So he immediately went to the kitchen or whatever it was. And he sat down and he ate a shtickle meal. He ate breakfast at 12 o'clock at night. Midnight, he ate breakfast. Then he came to shul. As he was ready to go daven shachris, he suddenly started, because the tzadikim always demanded of themselves, he started thinking to himself, there's a chutzpah? After I stuff myself, I'm going to stuff himself. He ate a little something. But after I'm going to go daven shachris. But daven to the Eibishter, he felt so horrible. He couldn't come to himself. He felt so embarrassed. And with all the back and forth trying to figure out, yes, he said this, he was ready to almost faint. Nobody felt he ate a whole meal. How do you do that right before Shachris? He's ashamed of how can he daven? He became so uncomfortable with himself that he didn't know where to place himself, and he decided that he has to hide. He was uncomfortable being anywhere. So he saw in the shul by the Melaveh Malkah, in the back of the oven, behind the oven, there was like a place you can really squish yourself in. So because he was so uncomfortable with his entire mitzvahs, he was so embarrassed with himself that he went and he stuck himself in behind the oven. And that, I guess because he was still thinned out, he was able to squeeze himself into this narrow place. And he was there. That's where he was planning to spend the time of the day because he didn't know what to. Anyways, Rebbe Melech walks into shul. And Rebbe Melech starts pacing back and forth, of course. It's like usually he would go to his place, the daven, but now he's walking back and forth and back, like he's looking for something. Suddenly he comes to the oven, goes behind the oven, sticks his hand in, and gives him a schlep. And Reb Dovid in the beginning, he was discovered. He felt so uncomfortable. He pulled back. But when he realized that it was Reb Melech himself, that Rebbe was pulling him, he had no choice. He came out. He was pale, like as white as the wall. He was shaking, and Melech pulls him, and as he's walking with him, he wants to know. And Melech says, "When yet do get daven for the yom." And Melech is sending him to daven to be the chazan, to be the shliach tzibur. He's looking for a ditch that he can jump in and hide and kind of never, but no choice. Melech sends him to the yom. He goes to the yom. He started davening shachris. As he just opened the siddur and started davening, he forgot about everything. He forgot where he was. He forgot the whole situation. And he allowed the davening to just come from him. And as he was davening, his soul burst open. And the davening was on a level she'ein kamoyu. It was like when he got to the shira, it was like the song was like just flowing from him. And he elevated the entire Chavrei Kadisha, the students of the Melech, that were all Tzadikim in this government. They all were lifted up to such spiritual heights. It was unbelievable. After davening, the Melech says, "Yasher koyach," he says that the essen was das gegessen, the food that you ate, did you very well. Gave us a vayosha that we will remember. That's what he said. Gave us a vayosha Hashem vayom ahu, that we will never forget. But this is a story. Now, one time, Rebbe Melech, the Shinaveh related this story. The other story that's really beautiful. Rebbe Melech used to send his talmidim to various different places, to be machazek Chassidus. Chassidus was still then, third generation. So Chassidus needed a lot of chizuk. Rebbe Melech sent his talmidim. So he once called Reb Dovid in, and he had a shlichus for him. The way the story is initially told, I read it in this book, it says he sent him to Pinsk. I don't think he sent him to Pinsk. Because in the story you'll see he meets someone, Yankel the baker, Yankov the baker. And if you do a little research on this, Yankel the baker was one of the Lamed Vav Tzadikim, a great man. It was not in Pinsk, it was in a place called Pilsk. So and the story has to be the Pilsk. I don't think that Rebbe Melech was Isaac in spreading Chassidus in Pinsk. That was already the more Russian territory. That was not. In any case, he sent him to Pilsk, and he told him that you should go to a man. His name is Rabbi Yaakov the baker. And come to him and tell him as follows: that it's time to start in Pilsk, where they daven Nusach Sfar. It would be equivalent to our Nusach. Now, the Baal Shem Tov changed the Nusach that everybody was davening then in Europe, Nusach Ashkenaz. The Baal Shem Tov, because he was davening more Bikavanas, Nesaris, and Arizal, and all these Inyanim, so it changed to Nusach Sfar, which is Nusach Hari. Now, Chabad, we have the Nusach Hari that the Alter Rebbe would carve out, but other Chassidim, they daven on Nusach Sfar. Where do you come to people davening what's this Nusach Sfar? The Nusach Sfar is a kind of a Nusach Hari. That's really what it's supposed to be. It's just that our Nusach Hari is a very, 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 very worked out that you know it's perfect. The Nusach Hari that's generally called Nusach Sfar is supposed to be that idea as well. In any case, that meant to start a Chassidish minyan. So he went, and so he comes there, and he meets this Rabbi Yaakov the baker. This Rabbi Yaakov the baker was hiding as a baker, as a regular individual. But meanwhile, he was one of the Tzadik Nestorim. And he had heard of Rebbe Melech. And when Rebbe Melech sent him that he should start a Chassidish minyan, he should start a minyan in Pilsk, that davens Nusach Sfar. So he gathered together Cheved and he made such a minyan. What happened was, word got around the city, which was a very misnagdish town. And word got around town that they started a Chassidic minyan. The Rav got really, really angry and very upset. And the Rav sent that they should call this Yankel the baker. Yankel the baker that came, the Rav was furious. He said, chutzpah you have, you start a minyan, you do it Nusach Sfar, you're changing the Nusach, who do you think you are? He yelled at him, gave him over the head. And so the Yankel the baker says to him, no, he says, what did I do already? He says, who did I take? I took a few batlonim. I took a few, batlonim and a couple of tailors, a couple of, you might say, a couple of, not a chveiswa. I didn't go schlep over here. The everyday guys. I made a little minyan. And for them, the whole city has to be rashed up because I did this. And the Rav said, no, it's not forbidden. Okay. So he left quietly, didn't, and fine. But he continued his minyan. He didn't stop the minyan. Rebbe Melech had sent that he should have his minyan. Rebbe Dovid of Lelov had already given over the job, went back to Rebbe Melech. Fine. 3 weeks later, the Rav finds out that the minyan was not disrupted, and the minyan is continuing. The Rav got angry. The Rav called him. And this time, as he walked in, the Rav stood up and slapped this Yankel the baker in the face. With an anger at him, that chutzpah, they didn't listen to him. He kept the minyan going. That time, right after that, it was this Rav's daughter passed away. He fell ill. Just after that, she passed away. The Rav fell into a very, very deep depression of the sudden loss of his daughter. And his depression got so deep that he forgot all his learning. He was in a terrible state. He was very, very hard. Rebbe Melech calls Reb Dovid again, and he says to him, I want you to go back to Pilsk. Pilsk. I want you to go back to Pilsk. This time when you go back to the town, you're going to go, and you're going as a Rebbe. Rebbe Melech gave him a Rabbanish Bekish, like what the rabbis wore. He gave him a kolpik. He gave him a spadik that they wore, the big Rabbanim that Rebbe's wore. And he sent him to Gaboyim, and he said, go back, you'll see what you got to do. That was Private Rebbe's there. So he sent him. He arrives with his two Gaboyim. He goes back to Yankel the baker's house. And this time, instead of just being quiet and everything, he opens shop. In other words, he is allowing people to see who he is. And he's teaching Torah, and he's giving chassidus, and he's giving things. And people start hearing there's a tzaddik that came to town. People start coming for brachas. Word gets around town that the tzaddik's brachas are being fulfilled because he was malnoifes. We'll soon see stories. So people started. So the rabbi's family heard that this Rebbe came to town, even though there was a strong snagdim, but they didn't know what to do with their father. Their father was going into deeper depression from day to day. He was literally getting sick, and they didn't know what to do. Rav was out of commission. So they decided that they're going to B'leis Bereda, they're going to go ask this Rebbe who came to town for a bracha for their father. So they came to him and they asked him if he doesn't mind that the Rav is very ill and sick, if he doesn't mind to come visit the rabbi in his house. So the Dovid said to them, Chas v'shalom, I should come. No, not they should. They asked him if the Rav can come visit him. That's what they asked. If he's going to receive the Rav can come visit him. So he said, Chas v'shalom, the Rav should come to me. I'll go to him. So the Dovid came to the Rav when he saw him in that situation. And Dovid told him like this, here. He said to him, do you know who you slapped in the face? You hit. He says, Yankel the baker. Do you know that when Yankel the baker bakes his bread, we smell the lechem upon him all the way to Lezhensk? Every week when he bakes his bread, we can smell the reach of the lechem upon him all the way to Lezhensk. Says, do you realize that that's what? And when you did that, it was nigzer upon you, whatever. So he realized, he finally chaptzach. That's when his daughter fell sick and his daughter died, and that's when he lost his whole thing. And he started crying. He says, "What can I do? I remember that. I feel terrible." He said to him, the first thing is you have to ask Yankel the baker mechila. You have to go ask forgiveness from him. Secondly, just be makabel upon yourself that you're not going to bother with the Chassidish minion in town, and you're going to let the minion continue and everything. So he did what he was told. And after that, the depression left him and the darkness left him. Came back, gesund again, and everything was fine. And from that day on, when Pilsk had its Chassidish minyan and it was growing and so on and so forth. This is the story with when Dovid was by Melaveh Malkah. Another story was beautiful story that Dovid was once on his way to visit Melaveh Malkah, and he was in the forest. It was before Pesach. And he was bringing a matana, a present to Melaveh Malkah, that he was something to take the matzahs out of the oven. It's some kind of whatever they are, whether it's the shovel that you use. He managed to get a shovel, the type of shovel that is used to get matzahs out of the oven. He's walking through a forest. He's walking in the forest, Matzah Shabbos, you have to talk about, as we're going to see in a moment. He's walking through the forest, and he knew the way to Lezhensk because he went many times, but somehow he took a wrong turn and he got lost. And he's lost, and he finds himself deep in the forest. And as much as he's trying to kick haroitz from the forest, he can't. He's only getting more and more fablunget and more fablunget. And he's getting scared. He doesn't want to be stuck in the forest, get lost in the forest. He can die in the forest. The whole thing was very frightening. So at this time, he starts crying. Reb Dovid Bechlal was a very soft guy. And he's crying. Suddenly, out of nowhere, a man comes. And this person said, "What's Veinst? What are you crying?" He says, "Because I'm on my way to Lezhensk. I'm lost over here. Again." So the man said to him, "Come with me. I'll show you the way." So the man takes him and he brings him all the way to the outskirts of Lezhensk. And before he says goodbye to him, he says to him, "I want to teach you two things. Number one," he says, "you should know Betzalel is going to like this. Betzalel, this is not the part you want to fall asleep by. This part. This story I said special for you. This man tells Reb Dovid, before he left, he said two things I want to tell you. Number one, when you want to take two pieces of wood and you want to put them together, that they should be really, really connected one to each other. You have to really saw and what is it called? Sand it down, that there shouldn't be any pieces sticking out where one can stech the other. One can, so you have to really sand it down really well. Secondly, he said, before you look and you evaluate other people's lackings, deficiencies, people's chesroinus, he says, make sure to look at them from within them, not from within you. That's what he said. Look at them from within them. Don't look at them from within yourself. And then the man left. But the first one is to put two pieces of wood together, you have to sand. You have to smooth it out, that no splinters should be sticking out and protruding out. And Rabbi Yitzchak Vurka related that Dovid would always repeat this teaching, and he said, "I know for sure it was Eliyahu Hanavi, who brought me then and took me over there, and he taught me. And this has always been by him a very, in other words, when we in relationship with other people, important to recognize that you got to cut like Betzalel always likes to tell me from the Hayom Yom, you have to cut the fingernails before you give musar or you give things to others. You have to always make sure in any relationship that these aren't little things that stick out which poke. We sometimes aren't aware that we can be pokey. We can have certain pokers. So we have to make sure to smooth these things out. Secondly, to be sure that you always have to look at other people from the perspective of where they're coming, not from where you are, because you're completely. One time he traveled somewhere. Rabbi Yitzchak Vorka says another story. The Chlal of Dovid of Lelov was Mekadev, tremendous giants to Chassidus. He's the one who brought the famous Yudah Kaddish, the Yudah Kaddish from Pshischa. He was the one who brought Rebunim of Pshischa. He's the one who brought Rabbi Yitzchak Mevorka. If you learn a little bit about the Polish dynasties, they're all, it looks like he hooked them all. He was he would go out and he had his expert in feeling out neshamas. And he brought the giants of the giants who later became, even though he wasn't much feeding his own Rabbista, because he always saw himself as, after the Melech passed away, he became a student of the Chayzer from Lublin. He traveled to the Chayzer, the Kashnitz Magid, and those were mainly his two Rabbeim after the Melech passed away. But in any case, so the story is that what did I tell you? He brought them to the Chayzer. Baal Shem Tov wasn't alive anymore. He brought them to the Chayzer of Lublin. But in any case, what was I saying earlier? That I was telling a story. 1 second. What was he? Oh, he was traveling. He was traveling. And there was this lady who suddenly sees him, and she runs over to him, and she starts slapping him. She pulls him in the beard. She's attacking him. Not Dovid. And because what happened was, her husband abandoned her, and he didn't see him in a long time. And for whatever reason, she mistook, her husband looked a little bit like that. She guessed didn't get her. She hadn't had her eyes checked in a while, so they had them not checked with good vision. She mistook it. She jumped on this guy because it was her husband. She was angry that he left her. She's beating this guy up. He's beating up the Rebbe. So Reb Dovid stops, and he says to her, "Listen, they tell me." He says, "Give me a sign of one of the things that your husband had. Give me a simon on his body that your husband had." So she said he had a birthmark on his leg. So he picked up his pants and he shows her that he doesn't have it. So then it became very clear that he's not the guy. So she starts crying now and begging. She's asking for forgiveness, especially since I think she figured out that he was not a regular person. So she felt so horrible. So he said to her, he says, "What?" He says, "You didn't hit me. You were hitting your husband. You only happened to think, you mistook me for your husband, but you weren't." The beating that you were giving was to who you thought you were giving, not to me. So what are you asking me, Mechila, for forgiveness? And then he going on to explain that that's what Yosef said to the brothers. You thought, you were angry at someone who you thought Yosef is, but that's not me. That was someone else. So whatever you were thinking. And most fights and arguments that people have with each other, it's because people mistake and misunderstand the other people, and they're really angry at not the person that they're really angry at what the image they're creating of that individual. That's what they're fighting against. So therefore, vanish to Kratz. Don't become all and recognize. He had an enormous sensitivity to everybody and everything, even to animals. Enormous sensitivity. He used to go out in the middle of the market. He used to go in the middle of the market, and he would go to the horses. And because the market people got busy and it was a hot day, so he felt terrible for the horses. So he would be giving the horses to drink. You're talking about a tzaddik whose mind is all days in the higher world, someone who knows kol hatayra kula, he's in this and that, but yet what's in his head that horses are thirsty and they're not getting to drink. Rabbi Yitzchak Vorka would say as follows: we used to hire a wagon to go together with the Dovid of Lelov. We would go to the Chayzer for Yom Tovim, for special times. As we would travel, we would see Chassidim that are coming. Chassidim would come, and we would bring all the people onto the wagon. We would schlep the people on the wagon. Before you know it, there was a packed wagon. When it was getting pretty heavy, the Dovid couldn't stand that the horses are having a hard time. So what we would do is we would all go off the wagon, and we would just leave the suitcases on, but everything, all the packed, and we all walked because he wouldn't chas v'shalom want that the horses, Tzar Balchaim, should be hurt by it. One time he was rushing somewhere Erev Shabbos, and I needed to get somewhere, and so the Balagala was smicing the horse. So he told the Balagala, he said to him, he says, after 120, the horse is going to call you to Din Torah. The horse is going to call you up there to Din Torah. He says, but it's Erev Shabbos. He says, you're 100% right, it's Erev Shabbos, and that's what you're going to argue. That's what you're going to argue. He says, but I think it'll be pretty embarrassing to have to stand in front with a horse. The Vilstein mitten fair, he says, do you want to stand with a horse for Din Torah? But you know the horse is going to call you for judgment. Isaiah does. Super sensitive to animals and to everything. Here's a very, very special story. That and then we're going to sing some Nigunim. And Dovid one time came to visit a friend of his. And when he came to the house of this Chaver, this friend, together they were going to go together to Lublin, to the Chayzer from Lublin. They were going to go together to the Chayzer from Lublin. When he was there, the Rebbetzin individual got very excited. Not just the Rebbetzin. The Rebbetzin, her husband, they got happy. Such an important guest. The Dovid came to them. So she wanted to cook something for him. But she didn't have anything in the house. She didn't have anything. All she had was a little flour. But she didn't even have wood to cook anything with. So she decided, she went out to the forest behind the house, and she was collecting. She found a couple of shpendelach, she found a couple of twigs. She made a fire. She took the flour that she had, she mixed it with water, and she made, what did she make? Biscuits, garnished. There was no taste, nothing. She made a flour, little cookies with flour and water, and that was it. And then she served it to them, to her husband and to him. He ate with her, fine. He went to the Chayzer. He comes back to his house, and he tells his wife, you should know, I was at the house of my friend, and they cooked me such biscuits as dance. I said, it had a tam from Gan Eden. Literally, I tasted the taste of Gan Eden in the biscuit. So his wife is very wise. She's wondering because she knows her husband he's not into, into food and into the taste of food. This is not his thing. Like, why is he busy with the food, with the town? So she had to figure out the secret. So she traveled to the other town over, with the other one, to the other Rebbetzin. And she asked her, what did you make of these biscuits? I never saw my husband so excited about biscuits. So she says, to tell you the truth, let me tell you. He says, I went out, I got the thing, I put it together, I felt terrible. And I said, while I was making the biscuits, I said to the Bnei Shalom, I said, you know that if I only had the capabilities, I would, for such a tzaddik, to be mahana the tzaddik, to give such a hana, to give a pleasure to the tzaddik, there's no tirch in the world that I wouldn't do in order to make the food so tasty. I would have done whatever I can. But I don't have anything but the flour and the water. That's all I have. You, the Eibishter, you have the Agans Gan Eden. That's what you have. Please, Hashem, send a little bit of your Gan Eden into my biscuits. And I was davening and davening until I finished my biscuits. So, those were the biscuits. He tasted the taste of Gan Eden. The question is, if we would eat the biscuits, would we taste Gan Eden? Taste Gan Eden. I think probably not. As long as you taste omelets and this and that, you don't really taste biscuits of Gan Eden, but this is what he tasted in the food over there. So he didn't answer. He said he hardly ate, didn't eat. He was so excited to have a guest. He would sit and a guest would come to him. His excitement of having, he would sit along with the guest and eat, just because the guest would feel comfortable eating together with him. Once a person came, and the guy was eating and eating and eating and eating, and the Dovid hardly ate anything. But because this fellow was eating, so he felt he didn't want to make him uncomfortable. So he was eating along with him. He's eating and eating and eating. And suddenly the Nebayis recognized that there's no place in his stomach. He had absolutely not shy because he had a tiny little, he was skinny, nothing. And how was he eating so much? And when later they asked him, how did you, without your stomach, Platzik, he says, just like there's space in my house for Achnosis Orchim, there's space in my stomach also for Achnosis Orchim. One time it was before Shabbos. Whoa, One time it was before Shabbos, before Pesach, and a Yid came to him, and he didn't have anything to give him. The only thing that they had in his house was the bag of shmura matzah flour. They had the matzah flour for Pesach. You know what it is. You know what it is. It wasn't easy to get those days. The shmura matzah to have exactly what they needed. Gitavach. It wasn't so easy to get it. It wasn't so easy to pull it to get it. But now he had nothing to give him, so he took the shmura matzah's flour, and he made the guy breakfast. First, that's what it is. He made him pancakes. Literally, he made him pancakes with the shmura matzah for breakfast. And then he said like this. The reason why the flour is called matzah shmura is because it says, "Ushmartem es hamatzos." You have to watch the matzahs. You have to watch. Chazal say that it shouldn't become chametzik. That's the whole idea of shmura matzah. But you should know that from that very same pasuk you learn out "Ushmartem es hamitzvos." You're supposed to watch a mitzvah. And Chazal explain, what does it mean? Mitzvah shebali yotcha. A mitzvah that comes your way, al tachmitzenu, don't allow it to become chametzik. So when you have a guest, and you have an opportunity to do hachnas orchim and take in the guest, so don't let it become chametzik. So that's what I did with the shmura matzah. No, what's going to be with Pesach shmura? But now he has a shmura matzah that he gave for this year. So,
Thanks.
Oh, I said stories for an hour, but now I'm singing it. Hey. Where are you going? We have a flying candles with us. We have with us Melaveh Mendelssohn is going to continue. I'm going to do one story first. A story here because Shmuley wants a story. A beautiful story. A beautiful story. No. We're good. We're good. I usually don't. I'm talking without the mic. You're here. The other people don't understand people. They can understand. They understand English. They're living here in America. Only for a month you understand English. Chai on the Chai. So the Dovid was on his way, walking to Lezhensk, and suddenly a wagon drives by, and the Dovid raises his hand to the wagon, and he says, "Maybe he can hitch. He wanted to hitch a ride." Hitchhiking was very common for Chassidim in those days. Chassidim are traveling to the Rebbe. They catch a ride. This was a rich man who's riding, and he's going to some market somewhere, to some business. And he sees a Yid on the side of the road. He stops, and Dovid asks him if he's going towards Lezensk. He says to him, I'm really going towards a market. I'm doing the business fair, but it's not far from Lezensk. It happens to be that I'm planning to stop in to ask for a bracha from the Rebbe in Lezensk. So I'll take you. He lets him onto the wagon. He's sitting there. And Dovid looked like a schlepper, like one of the beggars. I mean, he was poor. He wasn't. So he takes him on, and as they're in the wagon, the story is for you. And as they're on the wagon, he decides, this man, that he's going to have some fun at the expense of his guy that he pulled up. So he starts teasing him. And he starts asking him all kinds of questions so that he can poke fun of him. And he's going on and on. He decides this is his project. This is his entertainment. His entertainment is to give this schlepper guy that he took onto his wagon, to really give him a. And he's poking him here, poking him here. Now Dovid realizes what's the time over here. He's quiet. He lets the guy do his thing. He ignores him completely. He's happy the guy's giving him a ride. It's fine. When they get to Lezensk, Dovid went to go do hachanas before he goes into the Rebbe. This Reich Yid was so full of himself, goes out and he feels immediately they're going to let him in. He's going to go into the Melaveh Malkah. He's going to get a bracha, so he's there. Meanwhile, he wasn't getting the covet that he expected he would get. The Melaveh Malkah didn't let him in right away. So he's sitting in the waiting room. He's already waiting a few hours. This was an Orcha Parcha guy that he took on. And Reb Dovid, meanwhile, had finished his hachanas. Reb Dovid had finished his hachanas, and he came to the Rebbe's room while the rich man is waiting in the waiting room. And the moment Reb Dovid walks in, the Melach's door is open, and a Melach asks that Reb Dovid should come in. This rich man is looking, and he sees that this beggar that he had taken on his wagon, he had teased him and had made his life miserable in the last few hours, is immediately let in. He right away started having second thoughts that maybe he's not the schlepper that he thought he is, and maybe he's somebody special. So he bites his lip. He's getting a little nervous. Meanwhile, Reb Dovid spends 2 hours by the way. When he comes out, this guy is sure now that this is the person in the Melech in the room with the Melech for 2 hours. He must have been. He comes out and he goes over. He immediately scans the room. He goes over to this man who gave him a ride. He whispers to him and he tells him like this. The Dovid says to this Yid, he says, listen here, when you are traveling now and you go back wherever you're going, make sure that when you hear cries for help, follow where those cries are calling from. Go after those cries and see to it to help the individual, whatever you're able to do. And with this, Dovid continues and he walks. This Yid was very taken about this whole thing. This Yid, he made fun of him. He's now telling him what. But he hears. He goes into the Melaveh Malkah. The Melaveh Malkah doesn't spend too much time with him. Gives him a bracha. He leaves. He's on to his next business stop where he was traveling. And as he's going through the forest, he suddenly starts hearing cries for help in Polish. So he remembered at that moment what this Yid had told him. So he brought and he starts investigating where the sounds are coming from. He's allowing the sounds, from his listening closely from which direction. As he's getting closer and closer and closer, he comes to an area and he sees that there is a wagon, coach, with a horse, a rider in the front. And it seems like they're sinking in the mud and they're going deeper and deeper. What happened is they stepped into a swamp and they were literally drowning. And as much as the wagon driver tried to pull the wagon out, they were just getting further and further. And the wagon driver is literally standing over there, literally helpless. He sees that the wagon is going down, down, down. He can't even leap because it's quite a lot around him, this mud. He can't even leap off. But the worst part is he sees the guy in the coach. The guy that's inside is locked inside. The mud that's around the wagon is not allowing him to open the door. And he's screaming and screaming. So, he's going to help. These people are going to die out here. So he goes and he gets his wagon. He pulls the wagon. He takes a rope and he throws it to the he's going to do it some towing. He throws him the rope. The guy ties the rope to his hitches it up. The wagon driver hitches up the thing well to his thing. He has his horses and his horse and buggy ready. They set it up in a way, and the horses, he sends them once, twice. It took a while. Boom, 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 boom. And suddenly, bang, they towed this guy's wagon together with the horses, the whole thing out of the thing. The guy comes out and he's shivering. And he sees he's dressed really, 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 really like an important minister and so on and so forth. He comes out, he shakes his hand. And he says, "You saved my life. You saved my life." He's like crying. And he says, "What can I do? What can I give you? What can I give you?" He says, "I have everything. I'm a rich man. I don't need anything." He says, "But I want to give you something. I have to give you something." He says, "Yeah, I don't have to give me anything. For me, the fact that I saved the life is worth enough for me. I saved someone's life." He says, "No, I need to know. At least give me your name and your address." So he gave him the name and his address where he lived. He gave him his name. He said goodbye. I forgot about the whole story. He continues on to this fear that he was going to do business in. And this was the worst ever business situation that he had. He bought stuff ahead of him. And after his came back and he tried to sell, he lost a lot of money. But not only did he lose on that deal, he lost in the next deal, and the next deal, and the next deal. Before you know it, he lost everything that he had. He went from being this very wealthy man, he went to being literally a pauper. He had to sell his house, he had to sell everything, all of his furniture, all of his possessions. So much so that he became literally a beggar on the street. And so passed 10 years. 10 years. After 10 years, one day, there is a notification that this town that he lived in is now being promoted as becoming the main town, the main city amongst all these, because a new governor was elected, and this governor is going to make his headquarters in this particular town. As a result of that, it's going to up the entire town, that the town is now going to become a very hush of a place, because it's no more just a shmegegi little hick town. It's now going to be like the capital of the whole province. So what happened was they had this new governor. The governor was going to come in to visit, and he's going to take up residence in this town. So the town made a parade, made a whole Kabbalah's Panim. And they hung up, everybody had flags, and they hung up ribbons, and they put up the whole thing. Everybody had musical bands, and the mayor came, and everybody was all excited. They're going to greet the new council, the new governor is going to be as appointed. When the guy comes and everybody's parading and so on and so forth, there was going to be a special group of people with the mayor and all the important prominent members of the community who were going to come be the greeting community. We're going to welcome him for the welcoming party. When the minister receives them, he sends them a thing. He says he knows there's someone who lives in this town and his name is so-and-so. He names a certain Jew. He says, I want that person to be part of my welcoming party. He's a very dear friend of mine. I want him to be part of my party. So they start looking ahead of him, and they didn't know who he's talking about. They searched, man, because the guy used to be on a cover about it. Now he was a nobody. So they searched him, and they couldn't find him. So they couldn't find him. So the welcoming party, he wasn't there. The next day, the guy didn't give up. The guy sent out people to search for him, and they finally found him. And they notified him that the new governor wants to see him. No, a poor Yid finds out the governor wants to see him. He's in trouble. The first thing he knows, he's in trouble. So he's worried, he's scared. Why does the guy want from me? What does he need? He's terrified. Doesn't know. But he couldn't show up the way he is in rags. So he went to a friend and he borrowed for himself a suit, put on a pair of shoes that he should look like a half-decent human being. And like this, he went to see the governor. He comes in and he's all nervous. The governor jumps up, he runs over to him, he hugs him, he embraces him. After a while, he tells him, you don't recognize me? You're the guy. I'm the one you saved me. I would have been finished. I literally was already saying my last prayers because I knew I'm dying. And you pulled me out and you saved my life. And he says, how are you doing? So he told him. his situation, how he's been sliding and sliding, and he lost everything that he had and his business and everything. Now he's a beggar, he doesn't have anything. So the guy felt bad, and he said, okay, you know what, I'll take care of you. So he gave he gave him a nice amount of money that he should start his business again and start doing whatever, and he helped him out. He kept it, literally put him back on his feet. This guy managed to make his way back to prominence. And at that time, Melaveh Malkah had passed away already. There were different rebbes in town. And Dovid of Lelov became known as a Poel Yeshuas, as a great tzaddik. So he, one time, was passing through Lelov. He decided to go visit the Rebbe of Dovid of Lelov. When he comes inside, Reb Dovid recognized him immediately, that he's that rich man who once gave him a ride. So Reb Dovid said to him, did you listen to me? This is what Reb Dovid said. Did you listen to me when I told you that when you hear a cry in the forest, someone crying for help, you should follow it and go see to it to help? He said, yeah. And then he realized who this person is. That this is the poor person who came up by Melaveh Malkah and told him. And he says, Dovid says to him, so tell me, how are things? So he told him that from that day and on, he lost every bit, all of his money, and everything that he lost, and every tzaddik that went through. And how his life was saved, dafka, because he shut that person out. But Dovid tells him, let me tell you the inside of the story. The inside story is as follows. When you were with me in that wagon, and you decided that I'm going to become the target, I'm going to become your punching bag, and you're going to have entertainment because of me, you're going to just have fun with me, it was decreed upon you from above that you're going to die. And I saw that, and I knew that right away that would happen. I felt terrible. Again, the guy, but the only thing that's in his mind, he's thinking about, is that this guy Nevach is now going to be punished because he was hurt him. So I didn't know what to do, and I was very, very disturbed by it. So when I went into the Lamelach, I remember I spent 2 hours in that room, because I had tried whatever I can to try to annul the decree, and I couldn't. So I decided to enlist. I asked the Rebbe Malkah, to do what he could. If anybody could, he could. I wasn't surprised that Melaveh Malkah knew already everything on his own without me having to say it. And Melaveh Malkah had done what he can, and after he did whatever he did, he told me that he managed to change the decree of death to poverty, because oni chashav kameis, because a poor man can be considered. So he reverted to poverty, but I still was not happy. Why? Because I felt that soif kol soif, a yid is going to be miserable. He's going to suffer. Not only going to suffer, but it's going to be, we say, that a person shouldn't be punished on my behalf. I felt that this person will be punished on my behalf. It bothered me. So I asked the Melaveh Malkah, I said, maybe we can cut the time. Maybe we can make it less. He shouldn't have to endure so much. So Melaveh Malkah said to me, as Rabbi Dovid says, the Malkah said, since you are a negaya b'davar, since it was you that he insulted, you're the only one who you can be malamet chus. So you see what you can do. So he says, I was doing whatever, and you can give a set, and I was able to, so I guess he was doing his work, communicating up there, and he was able to get a sentence for 10 years, that it should end after 10 years. So that's why when I came out, I told you that when you go in the forest and you hear someone crying for help, you should extend help immediately, because I was already giving you the way out at that time of how to get out of his status. So you should be able to store him to end his thing. That was the story. Wow, Tzadikim. Wow. Oh, he's a Zayin. They do. The famous, I'll tell you just quickly, just one or two small little teachings before we continue with some stories. But the famous teaching is like this. Dovid of Lelov once said like this. When he once met a yid, a simple yid. He met a simple yid, and the simple yid was reading Chumash or saying Psukim. And as the simple yid was saying the Chumash, he was reading like this: Vaydaber Adoi El Moshe Leimoid Adoi Daber Oven Yisrael V'Amarta Aleim whatever Kisavoyu Aladas. When he got to the end of the pasuk, Rabbi Yisrael, the story is unbelievable. Whenever the guy got to the end of the pasuk, he would say Adoi. This is the way the guy was reading Chumash, and he's David's hearing this yid. After the end of every pasuk, he's mentioning Hashem's name, and that's like, you don't desecrate Hashem's name. So he asked him, what is he doing? And the guy said that two dots is Hashem's name. So in the end of every pasuk, there's two shtrechim. So therefore, he's reading it. So Reb Dovid said to him, no, you're reading it. He says, when two Yidden get together, a Yid is a Jew. When two Yidden get together, it's Hashem's name. That's where Hashem is. That's where so a Yud and a Yud is Hashem's name. But providing when the two are standing side by side equal. When one of them rises on top of the other one, he says it's not Hashem's name. Then it's a hefsek. Then it's an interruption. That's the sign of the two dots this way. The two dots represent only when they're standing side by side. That's his teaching on Avos Yisrael. He also taught this week in the parsha. It says v'yisam li segula mikola amen. That you should be, and he teaches segula like the Alter Rebbe teaches. You will be my segel. It says also the same word. You will be like the nekudas hasegel. A segel has three dots. But one of the things about a segel is that every single way you turn the segel, it's always the same shape. Every other one, a patach, if you switch it, it's not the same shape. If you switch a tzereh, it's not the same shape. A comet, segel, any way you turn it, it's always going to be the three dots. Segel is always going to be the same image. He said the Eibishter is saying that a Jew, no matter how, Jews never change. A Yid is not shayach hashinoi. There's no change. A Jew can't lose his holiness. And therefore, a Yid is always, he says, it's impossible for a Jew to have anything negative. There's no negativity, there's nothing bad in any Jew. Yidden are perfectly holy and perfectly godly and perfectly pure, perfectly beautiful. If you see any defect or any problem in a Yid, that's not the Yid, that's the goy that's in the Yid. That's what he said. The goy that's inside the Jew is the problem. Oh, but the Yid that's in the Yid is always pure and is always holy. I was reading a lot of his teachings. You see, there's a lot of I mean, Chassidus, but you see a lot of Rebbe, all these Inyanim.
He has a sefer or?
No sefer. He hardly ever said Divrei Torah. He didn't speak. He didn't say Divrei Torah. When he passed away, I'll tell you an amazing story. When he passed away, his son, the Moshe of Lelov, together with this great student, Rabbi Yitzchak Kolovurkin, decided to go visit Ramatul Chernobyl. Maybe they were looking for the Rebbe, they were looking where to go. They went to visit Ramatul of Chernobyl. When they came to Ramatul of Chernobyl, they heard the story. Ramatul, and they didn't say who they were. And Ramatul of Chernobyl asked them where they come from. They said they come from a town called Lelov. So he said, Ramatul said, I'll tell you an interesting story. When my father passed away, Reb Nochem, before he passed away, I was crying on the side by his bedside. I was crying and crying. And my father said to me, "Was weinst du? Why are you crying?" I said, because I never had another teacher. You were my only teacher in my life. And now that you're passing away, who's going to teach me Torah? Who's going to be my mentor? I don't have a mentor. So my father promised me, Reb Nochem, that I'm going to come visit you all the time. I'm going to teach you Torah. From that day on, there wasn't a day that my father didn't visit me. Every single day, Reb Nochem would come to his son Ramatul and teach him Torah from Gan Eden. He would come to teach him. He says, but one time my father didn't come. 1 day, 2 days, 3 days, 4 days, 5. I got very scared. I read the story in 2 places. One place it says 30 days, another place it says 40 days. I'm not exactly sure, but the story is brought either 30 days or 40 days. Finally, my father came. I asked him, Tata, where were you? All these things finally came. I thought you're angry at me. I did something wrong. You're not coming. And he said, no. There's a very big tzaddik in Poland who passed away. And he said, you don't know him. So he said, you don't know him. His name is Reb Dovid of Lelov. And when he passed away, they set him up in Gan Eden, and they told him to say Torah for all the tzadikim in Gan Eden. And he was speaking Torah, it says, straight for 30 or 40 days. So Dovid of Lelov was saying Torah. Rabbi Yitzchak Ginsburg has a whole Torah in his book that I shared. That's why I looked it up. And over there, he explains how the tzadikim who are silent, he calls it the chashmal. Tzadikim who are chash, they're silent, and tzadikim that are meant to talk. And he brought the whole thing again to the Dovid of Lelov as one of the chash tzadikim. And those tzadikim who don't talk down here, they're offered, they're talking. So over there, he's pouring the Torah now. But just another interesting story that one time, Dovid went together with the Yudah Kaddish of Peshiska. They went together to visit the Pashat Tzemagah together with the third tzaddik, the official of Strikev. 3 tzaddikim. They came, and the Kajitz Magid was very old and frail. He was laying in bed. But because of these 3 tzaddikim who came to visit him, he told his family they should prepare a nice milchig meal. So they prepared a milchig meal, and had butter and bread and all kinds of things, and they put it on a table. And the Kajitz Magid sat down to the table from his bed. Next to his bed, he sat down by the table. Next to him, he placed the Yiddah Kaddish of Pshischa. And on the 2 ends of the table, one was an official of Strikiv, and the other one was Reb Dovid Lelov. And they're sitting on the 2 ends of the table. And the Yiddah Kaddish and the Kajitz Magid start talking quietly amongst themselves. So the official is trying to eavesdrop and trying to stick in to hear what they're talking. Meanwhile, Reb Dovid Lelov is sitting there quietly and he's smearing butter on the bread and he's eating. So the Kajitz Magid turns around and he says to the official, he says, "Was tistet? Why don't you do like der younger man? Why don't you do like him?" And Schmidt put it off in this, and every single one he's offering a carbon. Ein carbon, another carbon. I was like, why are you trying to mix into this while we're talking? You can fast and eat and drink carbonas. I mean, I guess his eating was on a whole different level of eating. But this is the mice. Chaim.
Hi. You want to sing something? You want to sing?
They're afraid.
You want to sing something? Ayono Hashem, Ono Hashem, Ki Yami Yadecho, Ono Hashem, Ono Hashem, Ki Yami Yadecho. Yono Hashem, Ono Hashem, Yami Yadecho. Yono Hashem, Ono Hashem,
Get the
Yami Yadecho. Yami Yadecho, En Amosecho, Yami Yadecho, En Amosecho, Yami Yadecho, En Amosecho, Vidato Lemoisecho. I know it, and oh yo, she, I know
What a treat we have it today. What a treat. Unbelievable. All the way from, Lelov Hasidus moved to Eretz Yisrael. By the way, let me give you a little bit of a thing. The son of the Dovid of Lelov was Moshe of Lelov. He made Aliyah to Eretz Yisrael, and since then, Lelov became mainly one of the founding Hasidus in Eretz Yisrael, Yerushalayim.
Moshe
Moshe moved to Eretz Yisrael. And I guess in that sense, they somehow integrated with Karlin. So there's Karlin and Lelov. Let me just tell you a beautiful story. This story, they merged, but they
Is it acquisition? You have one CEO.
There's a story I read today. It's interesting. When Napoleon, hear the story. When Napoleon was on his way off to when Napoleon was made his way off to the Holy Land, not the Holy Land. When Napoleon was during the Napoleon War, Napoleon was going up to attack. When they altered it, this is at the same time.
Lelov in Austria be West. You had a Biderman in Lelov, no?
Yeah. So Melaveh Biderman is from that family, his brothers. In any case, here's the story. When Napoleon was going up to Eretz Yisrael, not to Eretz Yisrael, when he was going up to fight against the Tsar, he was gathering his armies. There was a big fight, a big to do amongst the Tzadikim who was going to win that war. So I forgot to which town, but Napoleon was then passing not far from Lelov, and he heard that there was a tzaddik who knows future. You see, Napoleon Bechlal, he was busy with the Alter Rebbe, he was busy with things. He had he was connected to really intense spiritual forces, Kishim and things like that. So he sensed, he heard that the Rebbe So he dressed like an ordinary soldier and he went to visit him. When he came, he notified him that he's Napoleon. And he asked him to tell him and to predict to him what the future is going to be of the big battle that he's ready to go to against the Tsar. So Napoleon didn't want. So the Dovid didn't want to answer him, and he was really an honest case. And he said, "Until you promise me that if whatever I tell you, you're not going to harm me." So he made him a promise. So he told him that you're going to suffer a terrible defeat. The Alter Rebbe was on it already. He said, "You're going to suffer a terrible defeat. You're going to be devastated in this war." And so Napoleon got so angry. And he said to him as follows: "If you're right, and it turns out that I lose the war, okay, then it'll be fine. But if it turns out that I win, I'm coming back to get you." That's what he said. And he left. And we know the story. He went and he was on the way. The way the story is told, it's hard to believe the story of Azir State. On the way back, running or whatever, in utter defeat, he passed by and he went to see him. He went to see him and he took off. He thanked him. He said, "You were 100% right. I should have listened to you." He's 100% right. He said, and he took off. He had a red cape. And he handed him his red cape as a gift. And then he continued. Moshe of Lelov, when he went to Eretz Yisrael, brought that cape up to Eretz Yisrael, cape of Napoleon. He toiveled it in a mikveh, and then he made it into a pareiches in Aron HaKodesh, in the Lelov shul in Eretz Yisrael. For many years, they had that pareiches. What happened to it? Who took it? I don't know. But they had that red. That's the story I read.
Napoleon was looking for something from the Alter Rebbe.
Yeah, he wanted something.
He wanted something.
He got the slippers.
He wanted
He wanted the slippers, and then he got the slippers. Napoleon, yeah. Yeah.
He didn't get this.
Didn't get the slippers. He wanted Alter Rebbe warned they shouldn't give him anything.
He was trying to get but that's something to
The other people, now the continuation is there's Napoleon Shkoyach Heaven. You're coming back. The Rebbe, Dovid, Michi, the Dvar Torah that Michi likes to always say, the name of the Ruzhner brings it, it's really in the name of the Dovid. What's the Dvar Torah? In Pashas B'chukoisai. It says, Shlachti lachem chayas asada. This is the way the holy Rav Dovid Lelov learns a pasuk. Shlachti lachem, I'm going to send, Shlachti b'chem, I'm going to send into you. Chayas asada, the beasts of the field. V'shikla eschem, they are going to, shikla eschem, they're going to devour you. The mita eschem, they're going to diminish you. V'nashamu derachechem, all your ways, all your roads are going to become desolate. That's the curse. And as Hashem says, I'm going to incite upon you the beasts of the field. They're gonna kill you. They're gonna diminish you. Yeah. But we know the Alter Rebbe, the Mittler Rebbe says when the Tata learned, Herzich nicht kabra, Klos Herzich no brach. So Tzadikim, they were only able to see the good. So this is the Pirush that Reb Dovid of Lelov learned. He said like this. Again, there's very few divrei Torah from him, but the ones that are from him are so geschmack. So he said like this: I'm going to send you chayas. I'm going to send you energy. Hasada from Sedecha Tapuchim Kadishim, from the field of the apple orchard. V'shikla eschem means I'm going to destroy you, but he reads v'shikla v'sichla eschem. It's going to give you seichel. The sichla, it's going to enlighten you because you're going to have such giluyim from Chakal Tapuchim Kadishim. The sikla eschem is going to expand your seichel. The himita eschem, the mita, and it's going to diminish. It's going to cause you to have a bit. The mita eschem, it's going to bring you to us because you're going to have expansive godly consciousness. It's going to shrink your ego, and it's going to mita eschem. And all your ways are going to become shamadik. In other words, once you have bittul, and once you feel enlightened, whatever you do is going to be with neshama. Everything is going to be done with pure godly motives. So one of the things that he did, that verse, so that and he touched Reb Dovid once scared a taich, and he said that after 120, he's going to go outside, but he's going to come up there. Moshe Rabbeinu is going to come out to tell him that this is what I meant in this pasuk. That's what he said. What did he say? He says the same idea of like this paroi tells Moshe, tells the Yidden, you shouldn't continue to give them heaven straw for the making of the bricks. They can do it their own. Ask the question, the word lois sifun in that pasuk is not spelled with the vav, it's spelled with an aleph. Tough aleph, which is very strange. Sifun is with a vav. What's an aleph? Why did Moshe put the aleph? He says that the Paro's intention was that in those days we know the Yidden had one day off from work. Moshe Rabbeinu asked that it should be on Shabbos, so that the Yidden should be able to get together and that they should have, and that was the day that they learned that they had chizuk and they had everything. That's what kept them alive. Paro realized that. So Paro said, Lois sa'asifim means lois sa'asvan. You shouldn't gather together. He canceled the Shabbos meetings. Why? Because that's when they had these meetings. This gave them tavuna. This gave them an understanding in godliness. This gave them tavuna. This expanded their minds and their whole spiritual experience. So this is where Pari tried to stop them. Yidden, he's tried to stop the gathering of Yidden. And then when he said it, when it comes again, Moshe Rabbeinu will tell him that that's the kavanah that he had by putting in the aleph in to teach that that's what it was. That Yidden shouldn't have farbrengens anymore. Same what they wanted to do with us 2 years ago. They wanted to make sure that no one gets together. Everybody sits in isolation. Not to allow you.
Trump was Pari?
What? No, Pari was not trying to. Trump was saying Adonai. Trump said, go back to shuls. Can I say again? Das ist der Wort. Das ist der Wort. Here's another geschmack of Wort. Talking about the word. Bevovin tiskator. Bevovin tiskator. We say it in davening. We perfect in Zmiris. Bevovin tiskator. With Vovin, they become bound together. So Reb Dovid said like this. If you know the shemus of Yud Kei Vav Kei, the Shem Samach Gimel, Ayin Beis, Ma and Ba. These are the four names of Yud Kei Vav Kei. The milui of the Vav has three tzirufim. The way you fill a Vav can either be Vav Vav, Vav Aleph Vav, and Vav Yud Vav. In one tziruf, in Shem Ban, it's Vav Vav. That's the only one. Shem Ban, it's Vav Vav. In Shem Ma and in Samach Gimel, it's Vav Aleph Vav. And in Shem Av, Ayin Beis, it is Vav Yud Vav. So he says that, what is that? That's a Reis of the Kutshavirichu v'Yisrael. Vav Vav equals 12, that's Yidden, because Yidden are 12 Shvatim. Vav Vav, Vav Aleph Vav equals 13, that's Hashem Echad. Echad is 13. And Vav Yud Vav is 22, the 22 Eisiyas HaTorah. The Vav in Tiskator, in the Vav, that verbunden, a Reis of the Kutshavirichu v'Yisrael, they become Chadhu. They reveal the Achdus Hashem in the Vav. Yes. Yes.
Very inspiring stories in the story. What should we take? What should we do?
What's the big one?
What should we do tomorrow? Tonight?
We should open our hearts up to another Yid.
I like
No
protrusions. You gotta look what it is that's not allowing you to connect to another Yid in perfect unity, in perfect one. And Dovid used to I mentioned about the horses. Here's the thing: the Chayza from Lublin, the Chayza from Lublin was once waiting to blow shofar, and he suddenly turned around and says, "Where's Rav Dovid?" He was looking for him, they couldn't find him, so they sent to look for him. They found him in the stable. He was there. He had his yarmulke off. Must have had a cover on his head, but he had from his yarmulke. He had barley, and he was feeding the horses on Rosh Hashanah by Tkiyas. And the Chayzer was waiting, because what happened was the Balagdala ran to Shul to hit Tkiyas, and he forgot to feed the horses. He felt that the horses didn't eat. That sensitivity, he felt the horses didn't eat. It's Rosh Hashanah gegangen, and he went with the by Tkiyas Shofar. You imagine Tzadikim, what's in their mind? They sense. That's the Tzadik, that he can sense that he's so sensitive to others, even to a horse. With such an edelkeit to feel the pain of even the smallest thing. His son opened up a business, a store, and across the street, and then there were other businesses. So his father asked his son, how's business going? And the son kvetched. He said, you know what, there's a lot of competition. The people are taking away the business. He says, no, the business is good, he says. He says, you should have, then you have such a revach, you get so, that other Yidden are doing well. In other words, he demand that he should simply have a geschmack in the fact. We're in the business of fundraising as shluchim and so on and so forth. Sometimes we're like thinking, oh, this guy's taking away him, he's taking away that. Like geschmack that this guy did well. But he used to open his store just the bare minimum, so that he when he was young, he had a store. The bare minimum food that they can survive with the family, the rest he would close because he didn't want to take away chas v'sholom from anybody else's businesses. That's how he b'shumoyf and didn't want the chas v'sholom get into someone else's. Another yid was by him like the tachlis is an andere yid. All right, it wasn't an andere. Yeah. It's on YouTube. It's on now, and it'll be on tomorrow. He was a very big doctor. You know what the interesting thing about him is? I just want this last thing, very important. There was a doctor who was totally not religious. Dr. Bernard was his name. He was a big professor in Poland. Mamish had completely nothing. He was a Jew. He had no observance at all. Totally everything. He had no connection. And he made him into Baal Tshuva. Not only that, he became this Yid who turned over and he made him into Baal Tshuva, became a big Rebbe. He was called Reb Chaim Dovid of Piatrokov. He was a huge Rebbe, and he was a doctor. And he made him. What happened was, when we heard the story, he became a big Rebbe. The Chaim Dovid, he was a ish, and the Tzadikim would say, like, only the Dovid of Lelov was able to take someone, so this, and not only bring him back, but he was able to turn him into a Rebbe. He became a. So what happened was, the story was that he was treating a patient, a Yid, and that guy had a sickness in the lungs. I think it was, what was the sickness that people had a lot then? It was tuberculosis. And he was mamish, and the doctor he was treating him for a while, and then the doctor told him, your lungs are gone. Your lungs are literally gone. And therefore you should just, live your last few, try to live the best you can for the next little while, because you're dying. So the guy heard and he decided that he wants to go to the I forgot which town where they had the baths. Whatever. He was going to enjoy a little bit of spa time I think when he got there, they didn't let him in because he had tuberculosis. They didn't let him in, so they turned him after he traveled over there. So he was on the way back, and he heard that there's no, he didn't go to a tzaddik. Why did he stop off by him? No, maybe he did. Maybe he heard that he was there. I'm not sure. He came to him. To the Dovid. And the Dovid sat him down, and the Dovid said, "You have to eat." I wanted to feed him. So the Dovid didn't have anything in the house. He had cheese, old salty cheese, and wine. Well, someone must have left l'chaim over there. He had a bottle of wine, strong wine, and cheese. So he offers him to eat. The guy says, the doctor warned that cheese and wine is the worst thing you can eat. So the Dovid said, listen here, I have a mitzvah of achnosas orchel. Now you are going to be my mitzvah of achnosas orchel. Shoym a mitzvah lo yeda davar ra. Someone who keeps a mitzvah doesn't know anything bad. But mitzvah wasn't garnish, you should eat. So the guy ate the cheese. He became so thirsty. It was salty cheese. He had nothing to give him. So he gave him the wine. The guy didn't want to take the wine. He said, "Damn." Anyways, he drank the wine. He got sleepy. He fell asleep. A few hours later, he wakes up in the morning after he comes out. He's breathing like a normal person. The first time he's breathing, he's able to walk outside. He feels the fresh air. And he's completely healed, garnished, nothing. There's not a trace. Comes back, and the doctor, he goes to see the doctor. And the doctor checks him out. Dr. Kindle, he said, what happened? He says, you were a dead person. I know what your lungs were like. He tells him, he went to this rabbi who healed him. He said, what did he do? What did he give you? He says, he gave him cheese and wine. He said, you're crazy. He gave you cheese and wine. He said, yeah, he gave me cheese and wine. He said, I got to go see him. He traveled to this is the story. Yeah, he came to him, the doctor, and now Rav Dovid did this miracle to get this doctor. That was what the kavanah was. The doctor came to him, and the doctor and Rav Dovid, and he says to him, I heard you healed my patient. And he said, what did you give? He said, cheese and wine. He says, don't you know that cheese and wine is the worst thing you can give someone with problems with lungs and so on and so forth, breathing? So Rav Dovid says, yeah, but he said, see, it worked. He said, yeah. He says, can you teach me like what you know? And so he says, of course. He says, I've been practicing already for 30, 40 years. I've been doing this. It's not gonna, if I spend an extra 2 days showing you around a little bit my business, it's okay. I can afford to teach you. Stay over here for 2 days. We'll work together. So he says, but I have to give you a little preface exactly of how it works. So he starts telling him how the Eibishter created the world, Bashafen the Welt, and so on and so forth. And then he gave the Torah to the Jewish people, and he was Magar this, and he gave us mitzvahs, and through mitzvahs that brings spiritual healing to the neshama, and through the healing of the neshama, it brings healing to the body. He basically sat with him for 2 days. And in his holiness, he was showering him. And the guy didn't, mamash, he had no Jewish education. And he was and he explained to him that by Avraham Avinu, it says that Avraham Avinu had a special stone in which people looked at and they got a refuah. He says, what was Avraham Avinu's stone, a magical stone of refuah? His mitzvah of Achnasas Orchim. So he explained to him that the mitzvah of doing Achnasas Orchim can heal a person. Achnasas Orchim is inviting a guest and taking care of them. So the mitzvah of Achnasas Orchim, this is what he told the doctor. And the doctor, 2 days spending with Reb Dovid and this and that was enough for him to turn his life around. He became he became attached to him. He then brought him to Melaveh Malkah, I think, as well. This Chaim Dov Mepiti Pietrikov was a very, very big Rebbe. He remained a doctor, but when he would come to visit a sick person, he would always say that the person should give him a kvittel. So now that we told the story about healing, I need to mention that name. There's a name of someone, a baby, when he's a Fur Shalema. We want to mention her name. So the schus of Reb Dovid of Lelov, Reb Dovid of Shloima. I don't know his mother's name. His yard site was Zion Shvat. But Shvat, he knew he's passing away. What? Daf Natalia. Balziva Khan, Shabbat Rafur Shalema. Mamish. Amen. All the stuff that need. I think so.
Any other ones?
I don't know of. Yes, also, yeah.
Don't forget the bench.
Don't forget the bench. And alles good.
Mustard is bash.
Beautiful
This
stuff.
is like the cheese and the wine and like those biscuits. It's Dungan. The guy's name was Dovid of Lelov. I don't know if he was about
Which one?
Seems like he was. That they used to go together to the
right.
Sometimes he would go to Dovid.
Yeah.
Sometimes Dovid would go to Dovid. So the hard name was.
But who was that Ebbetson's
The
name?
Rebbitzon's name was Mrs. Dovid Zeller. That's what
She was the one who knew how to make the biscuits.
she doubted. She said, "Please, I want to do something for this guy." You know, the wife is so surprised because he's such a Gashmias. Talks about his biscuit. And then Napoleon won also with the thing. Those three are.
And what's the third one?
He said another story.
Which
He had
one?
Another story.
Which one? You remember?
I don't know. I don't know.
Chaim Levrach. So don't know that. No.
Like a book. You know, why she picks from my father.
Yeah.
And,
Yes.
so they're all, you know.
Chus Yogan Aleinu Val Kol Yisrael. Dovid Melech Yisrael.